Kickstarter is a website where individuals can show off their projects or ideas to the general public with the hope of getting support financially. Video games are a great example. Game developers will show off their projects, including screenshots, demos, roadmaps, progression, and etc. A lot of times these games get a lot of support and become very successful in the long run, while some unfortunately do not have the same fate. They end up not being as successful, or they just flat out fail. One particular example is a game that had a really good amount of support, however went so downhill after launch that the developers filed for bankruptcy months after the game's release. So how did a game go from having a good amount of support on Kickstarter to the developers filing for bankruptcy? My name is Gary the Prophet, and this is the tale of Woolfe the Red Hood Diaries.
So, in case you doubt it, this is no fairy tale, because there is nothing fair about it.
Woolfe the Red Hood Diaries was developed by Grin and was released on Steam on March 17th, 2015. You take the role as Red Riding Hood, a young orphan who's trying to uncover the truth about her father's death. It was said that her father, Joseph Hood, died due to a working accident at Woolfe Industries, and the case was simply closed. But Red wasn't buying it. She was convinced that the CEO of Woolfe Industries, B.B. Woolfe, was responsible for her father's death. So she travels to Orica, a city that is being overran by tall robotic tin soldiers, in hopes of finding out what really happened.
The smell of old books, pencils, and ink stains on the floor. That's my father, for sure.
It's always interesting seeing developers taking a fairy tale story and putting their own spin on it. A great example of this, and one of my personal favorites, is American McGee's Alice and Alice Madness Returns. And the story in Woolfe the Red Hood Diaries is quite unique to say the least. Set in a Victorian fantasy era and the big bad wolf being an evil CEO is honestly a concept that I definitely appreciate. With that being said, however, with only a good concept doesn't mean it's a good game overall. In fact, I have a lot of problems with this game that make me not enjoy it as much as I truly want to. Do I think it's a horrendous game? Not at all. But even after playing it through a few times, I never really found myself having a lot of fun. So let's talk about why.
My name is Red Riding Hood.
Woolfe's gameplay is centered around two key elements, platforming and combat. But let's talk about the platforming first. Throughout the levels, it's all about getting from point A to point B, whether it's jumping around the city, making your way through a sewer, or over the river and through the woods to Grandma's house we go. It's all about getting to your next objective, while some obstacles in the way, a couple of puzzles you have to solve, but it's all pretty much the same idea.
Aw, come on!
The platforming itself isn't all that bad. In fact, I quite enjoyed the city section at the beginning of the game. It kind of felt like I was playing Assassin's Creed, climbing up walls, jumping over buildings. Unfortunately, there were no haystacks that I could do a leap of faith into, but regardless, I honestly had a good time. But something that I really wish this game had a lot more of was exploration. The levels felt pretty linear, which is such a shame because they look absolutely gorgeous, and I would have loved to take my time to explore and find secrets. The only sort of exploration is going off the path for a few seconds and finding diary entries, which are indicated by these floating W's. My enjoyment for the platforming though went completely downhill in the woods section. While it is aesthetically and visually pleasing to look at, I don't understand why the woods are just tiny little floating islands.
An underground explosion shook the area last year.
I'm sorry, you said an explosion? You mean to tell me that an explosion caused the woods to float like Columbia from BioShock Infinite? A majority of the woods level is just sitting there and waiting for platforms to come to you before you can proceed. This really just ruins the pace of the game for me. If this occurred only a couple of times, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but the fact that it's pretty much the entire level, yeah, no thanks. After you get through the woods, there's a scene where Red finds B.B. Woolfe in his carriage. Wait, how did he get through the woods? On his way to grandmother's house. So you have to chase him down for a few minutes. As you chase him down, there are multiple paths, and choosing the wrong one can either slow you down or you can just completely fail the level. This level takes about a few minutes, and I don't really mind it that much, but the issue I do have is that if you for any reason fail, then you have to start all the way back at the beginning. Having no checkpoints is a real punch in the gut, and it feels like the progress you made was all for nothing. The platforming aspect of Woolfe was overall pretty average, from being really fun to being really annoying at times. But the platforming isn't my biggest problem. It's 100% the combat.
Even better. Let's go find that filthy rat.
The combat in Woolfe is sloppy, inconsistent, and just really boring. Red is equipped with only an axe and can do either light or heavy attacks. The game tries to tell you to do combos by doing both light and heavy attacks, but I found the most success by simply spamming the light attack. Whenever I try doing combos, it either just doesn't work or I completely miss the enemy that I'm trying to combo. There is also a roll button that you can use, but it doesn't seem like it gives you any iframes, and it doesn't really give you that much of an advantage, so I honestly never use it. The enemies that you fight are very basic and not really challenging at all. You're most of the time fighting these tin soldiers or fighting little fairies. There is an exception to these enemies though, and that is the Tesla guards. If they hit you once, it is an automatic death despite how much health you have. There are a few of them scattered around the levels, but there is one that you have to fight to progress. I just managed to cheese him by hitting him and dropping down to the ledge and repeating the process. You can also sneak around enemies, which can be quite useful, and honestly I prefer it because I'd rather not have to deal with the horrible combat. Woolfe also has two boss fights, Peter Piper and BB Woolfe himself. I'm gonna be honest, the boss fights really aren't that interesting or that fun to begin with, but my biggest issue with it is that they have these abilities that act like the Tesla guards. If they hit you once, it is an automatic death, no matter how much health you have, and you have to start the fight completely over, despite the fact that the bosses have multiple stages. So let's say you die in stage 2, you have to start at stage 1 again. I understand that boss fights are meant to be challenging, it's what makes boss fights a lot of fun, but it's no longer challenging, it's just flat out frustrating. And when I finally take down these bosses, I don't feel like I did something great, I don't feel victorious. Instead, I'm just a sigh of relief knowing that I never have to fight these guys again.
Hurts, doesn't it?
If Woolfe either just did a complete overhaul of their combat system or they went a 100% platforming route, I would have enjoyed this game a lot more than I did. The entire story is told from Red's perspective and through her dialogue, which is completely fine, it's not the first time a game has done this. But the thing is that the dialogue in this game just really isn't that great. The overall writing is just really not something memorable. I will give the writers props though, because the dialogue does rhyme to simulate a fairy tale.
Might just contain a clue to help me uncover the truth.
However, I think they tried too hard because some lines just really didn't sound right or just didn't really make that much sense.
Hit me with that dreadful flute. The only thing that hurts is my ears.
And also some lines that Red says while she's in combat or just simply progressing is just some of the worst dialogue I've heard in a very long time.
Thanks for the ride. You rock.
Like, seriously, this makes dad jokes comedy gold. Now, I just want to clarify something. I am in no way attacking the voice actress that played Red. She's simply doing her job, and I think she did a really good job. But the writing itself, while it is creative, I just simply wasn't a fan.
I wish I'd left my nose at home today.
The end of the story leaves players with a huge cliffhanger.
What's that noise? No!
This was 100% intentional because there was meant to be a sequel, Woolfe Volume 2. However, when I tried to do research on whether the game was being developed or the progress of it, I only got results showing the Diaries of Virginia Woolf. So, make of that what you will. I honestly really wanted to like this game, because of how much I liked American McGee's Alice, specifically with how he twisted up the Alice story and made it his own narrative. And with a story like Red Riding Hood getting a twist in Woolfe the Red Hood Diaries, I really wanted to enjoy it. It was cool in concept, the execution just fell flat, and it didn't work out for me. So now that I've given you my brief review on Woolfe the Red Hood Diaries, let's talk about what happened on Kickstarter and how it led to Grin, the developers, filing for bankruptcy.
My name is Red Riding Hood. I have no father, no mother.
Like I said before, Woolfe was originally on Kickstarter.com and was set to release on March 17th, 2015, which it did. There were plans for it to release on PC, and then there would be console ports in the future. However, that never saw the light of day. Grin offered backers a decent amount of rewards, from lower tiers just getting a copy of the game, Some mid-tiers getting things like an art book, soundtrack, access to testing the alpha, a ringtone with Red's voice on it, and even a tier of $1,500, which allowed a single backer to name one of the main characters. By the time the game launched, Woolfe received over 2,000 backers and that pledged a total of $72,139. This sounds pretty good, right? Well, unfortunately, on launch, it fell. On the day of release, people were already commenting saying that they never received a key to play the game, so if they wanted to play it, they had to go on Steam and buy it anyways, basically paying for it twice. Months went by and backers who pledged enough for physical or digital rewards never received what they paid for. Mechanics that were promised to be in the game, including magic abilities, never came true. The only magic is a wolf claw that isn't even obtainable until the very end of the game when you fight BB Wolf. If you try using the magic button at all before this, you just get this weird black screen for a second. At first I thought it was some kind of blinking mechanic like you would see in SCP Containment Breach, but that's just the game telling you don't have any magic, you idiot. On top of that, people complained about bugs and glitches, and the game just simply didn't live up to the expectations. This negative outcome was enough for Grin to file for bankruptcy and shut down in August 2015. A couple of months later, it was announced that Rebellion officially obtained the developing and publishing rights to Woolfe. They made a statement on Kickstarter saying that they will start distributing rewards to the supporters of the game, and they started doing so by November of that year. In terms of how many backers actually got the rewards when this happened, I couldn't find specifics, but even with Rebellion doing what Grin should have done, some still said that they never received what they paid for. As for whether or not Part 2 will be released, it will be completely up to Rebellion, and with how Part 1 went, I don't see it happening anytime soon. And even if Rebellion decides one day to develop and eventually release Part 2 and finish Woolfe's story, I'm probably gonna have to sit out on this one. Because if I didn't like Part 1, then why would I even consider playing Part 2? And if you do want to play Woolfe the Red Hood Diaries, it is currently on Steam for $10. So the choice is yours. Anyways, that is going to conclude this video. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and if you want to see more content like this, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe with notifications on so that way you know when I upload a video. My name is Gary the Prophet, and this was the tale of Woolfe the Red Hood Diaries.